you notice the Persians nurturing India with their religion? Name for Persia, Arya, where, the word Aryan comes from, highborn. The Aryan race, as confusingly Hitler was obsessed with. It's a Scythian people, isn't it? It's what his ancestry is. Didn't matter whether he was German or Austrian or anywhere in Northern Europe. Well, Europe, really. It was going to be Scythian ancestry. You trace it. These marauding, invading people constantly moving backwards and forwards across the landscape and down to southern Europe and so on. I think even into North Africa, but I'm not certain about that. But certainly into India, and they're the Aryans from Arya. The Aryans. I found I'd name my daughter Arya, and I, knew it meant highborn and so forth. But I was thinking of it from the point of view of the great songs, the solos in the great operas, the arias. Vibration, sound, creation, the transcendent features of the opera, aren't they? Magnificent and beautiful, of course. And of course, the Aryan, the Persian race moving down from the northwest into India, Indus Valley and so on. They brought their religion with them, didn't they? Zoroastrianism, swap things round about a bit, the Asuras and the gods and so on. And if you go further east, it's thought that the Buddha, the nearest thing we have to the Buddha, was basically a missionary from Persia. In fact, Persian king who was flung out. Not too concrete, the story, but something of that. Even Confucianism. It's not clear that that's not a Persian plant too. You see, it's this male spirit which conquers. In a wonderful, beautiful way, we want God to conquer, don't we? We see him as male in the sort of Jesus story context. And they take it by force. The children take it by force, of course. They're children of God. This from outside comes, and the children are of him and of the pastoral scenes, by which I don't mean now grasslands, I mean better than grasslands, rich farmland and so on. That's right, I think they in effect seized, I'm not sure, parts of North Africa, but Europe and Asia, China and India. Did they in effect get to North America? Well, whether from the east or, as history has it, from the west. Yes, of course. They are Caucasian. Haven't you noticed? Caucasian means central step. You know, it's the mountains that lead. Well, if you go north of, you come out onto the grass plains, endless, vast. In that sense, you could say Revelation's got it all mixed up. Babylon the harlot, as Revelation likes to name it, as mother of all these harlot religions, including I won't name them, don't want to upset them, but it includes all of them. They are born of this Persian expansive male drive and loyalty. I mean, we hold in such contempt if the man is disloyal, if he's unfaithful. You know, the person who doesn't keep his word and his bond. You know, my words will not pass away, says Jesus. Violent take it by force. The kingdom of heaven. You know, if Egypt were Eden, east of Egypt is Mesopotamia, and you've got the confluence of 4 rivers, haven't you? The Garden of Eden. Well watered indeed. Bit too well watered when end of the Ice Age, of course, the sea level rose. And I suppose engulfed in the Gulf, engulfed the Garden of Eden, if there is such a thing as Garden of Eden proper. But it's all been mythologized into historicity, hasn't it? And myth. Yeah. Story. And each culture seems to have its own version of much of the stories that we have in what we call our Bible. You know, the flood turns up in so many different cultures, even South America and so on. China. Crosses my mind, what are we seeing in the modern world? Men becoming women, and women becoming men. Or you could say they become a third and fourth gender instead. And I think some political correctness does hold that view. I don't mean it is correct, I mean it's named as being correct by some political systems, of course. It was always confusing that we thought of the man as masculine with a beard and so on, and we have this picture of Jesus, golden-haired, blue-eyed, and extremely soft and gentle. What's this? Well, it's what many of the ancient religions had, that the incarnations of God were both male and female. Of course, some modern drift likes to think of Jesus as having been historically a person, and with a following of women, one of the many Marys he actually married. And, you know, goodness, who were the children in that case? Did he have children? I mean, the mind runs riot, doesn't it? So Hollywood capitalizes on these, well, I think fanciful ideas. Zoroastrianism worships the fire as its symbol, which is what you need in the cold climate of desperately cold winters, isn't it? It's something that brings life, keeps you alive, warmth, very necessary. And of course, cook food and so forth, because you can't grow much when the ground freezes. Well, I don't think you can grow anything, really. Didn't you think it was always strange that there's one massive landmass and yet they divide it into two continents, and they take the Ural mountain chain as the divider of the continent? I mean, we don't use a mountain chain. Well, we could say the Himalayas divide India off as a subcontinent. Well, why we call it a subcontinent instead of a continent, I'm not clear. We don't call Europe a subcontinent, which in size and appendage you would think it is relative to Asia, just as India might be considered such. But Asia, as defined, would be all that expanse of what we assume to be Russian territory, but is what Russia stole, of course, from the Mongols or the Mongol-type people. And who knows? I mean, what was it? Tashkent and Samarkand. Samarkand was the capital at one point, wasn't it? Of Mongol Empire. I'm not sure what you call it. But those vast lands. And they were the source of the Silk Route, of course. So valued by Europe, Mediterranean, and so on. Said to be the most beautiful, magnificent cities. In effect, Europeans seem to have obliterated the history of it. All that's left is what was further over, what we think of as China. And including Tibet. We have a historicity that sees the world from a West European point of view. 19th, 20th, 21st century. Now European come American view. But the centre of the world was not this insignificant little country, buffer state called Israel. Centre of the world was the great empire of Persia. And that became the vast empire of the hordes of Central Asia, which we dismiss as just a particular pastoral, invasive group of Asia, but in fact had vast territory and power structure, capital cities, and technology and learning. We dismiss them as savage warriors on horseback. They were more advanced than the rest of us. That's the whole point. The horse was transport when we didn't have such. the Viking ships and so on. I mean, these are incredibly technologically creative people and fearsome in war and effective. The terror of any empire to the west, to the east, or to the south. And the only thing north is ice. But in a sense, so what? It's just history that we don't have enough evidence of to be sure of. We can, make conjecture and imagine, but we won't know. Because we are not creatures of knowing. We are creatures that trust, and because of trust, we create and have survived. You know how if a family lose trust in each other, they disintegrate and lose life. And the very essence of man is that they trust and visualize, think, imagine. They live in the mind. Not out there in the world, they live in the mind. That's where all the thoughts are coming from, and all the worries are, and all the hopes, and all their drives and ambitions, they're in the mind. And when they set out to rule and invade the world, it's from the mind, from the spirit, you see. It's not tangible. And it goes out and it changes the world. Not always for the better, I might point out, by a long way. Although fantastic civilizations seem to have been created. But they're a frightening mix of good and bad, aren't they? All of them. Ashoka, this wonderful king of Buddhist king, as he turned out to become most earnestly, of India, conquered India from the northwest. Well, he's Scythian, isn't he? He's Persian, mate. And he was a conqueror, there's no question of it. And that's what he repented of, didn't he? Sought enlightenment, and then sought, of course, to give others enlightenment. A beautiful king. It's probably how many percent myth now, but what a lovely story. Sent missionaries out all over the place, towards Egypt, towards China, the Far East and China, Enough, Marshall. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.